Chapter 4 The False Prince. Lot laid out a sack of fresh fruit and salted meat. Rather than him and Connor, none of us touched it. It's your last chance until breakfast, Connor said. You'll want to keep your strength up. Roden shook his head at Connor. He didn't look like he could stomach a bite of food anyways. Tobias had been nearly frozen since Latimer was killed. He barely even blinked. I'd gone numb, literally. I felt nothing. Connor and Mott ate their meals while the rest of us sat. Slowly, the shock wore off, and we began to accept that as long as we did what we were told, we'd live to see another morning. Connor offered the food to us again. We have more traveling ahead of us, so you'll only hurt yourself if you don't eat. Roden reached for the food first. He handed it to me, then Tobias. The piece of meat I took was unbearably salty. It forced me into taking an apple, even though I had no appetite for it. I don't think Tobias or Roden enjoyed their food much either. A wave of nausea threatened me every time I looked in the direction where Latimer had fallen. At the orphanage, we'd all seen our share of violence and brutality. I once saw an older boy start kicking a younger one just for rolling over onto his mattress. It took 5 of us to stop him, but Connor had told Latimer it would be safe to leave. He baited Latimer to teach us a lesson about leaving. The knowledge that Latimer had been brought only for that purpose consumed my thoughts. If I figured out what was happening even for a few seconds earlier, could I have stopped it? Were any of the rest of us here as no more than a lesson to the others? Now that you've eaten, we can continue our conversation, Connor nodded at Tobias. Stand up. I wish to get a general understanding of who each of you is. Tobias stood stiffly. His knees were rigid and he looked like he was about to be sick. Tobias, you and an opponent are engaged in a sword battle. It's meant to do a battle to the death, but it also clears that he's better than you. Do you fight on knowing you'll likely die, or do you stop and beg for your opponent's mercy? I beg mercy, Tobias said. If it's clear I won't win, then nothing is accomplished through my death. I'd hope to live and make myself stronger for the next battle. Conan nodded at Roden. What about you? Roden stood. Fight to the death, even if it's my own. I'm a good fighter, sir, and I will not live as a coward. Tobias flinched at that, but he said nothing. A slight smile crossed Roden's face. He knew he'd taken an edge with his answer. Have you been trained with the sword? Connor asked. Roden shrugged. An old Carthian soldier lives near my orphanage. He used to have me do rounds with him to keep up his skills. Did you ever win? No, but then you haven't been trained. Connor turned to me. Sage, beg mercy. Roden snorted. I continued. Then, when my opponent lowers his guard, certain at his victory, I'd finish the battle. Connor laughed. A violation of all sportsmanship and swordsplay, Tobias said. What do I care about sportsmanship, I said. If I'm about to be killed, it's not play anymore. I won't check the rules to see if my survival fits with someone's code book of fair play. You never win that way, Roden said. Any master swordsman won't lower his guard until you're disarmed. Connor didn't say he was a master swordsman, I said. Only that he was better than me, and yes, I would win. Connor walked closer to me. Stand when I addressed you. I obeyed. Connor was taller than me by several inches and stood closer than I liked, but I refused to step back. It occurred to me that he was testing to see whether I would. Are you standing straight? Connor asked. You slouch so much. I might mistake you for a hunchman, and with all that hair in your face, you might be a criminal too. I straightened but made no attempt to push my hair out of my eyes. I could see him just fine, which was all I cared about. Connor asked, who do you look like? Your mother or father? That's hard to say, sir. It's been a long time since I've seen myself in the mirror. You have a clever tongue and an arrogant tilt to your head. I'm surprised Mr. Terbeldy hasn't beaten it out of you. You mustn't blame her. She beat me the best she could. You're a trick to figure out, Sage. Would you ever be on my side, even if I chose you above the other boys? I'm only on my side. Your trick will be convincing me that helping you helps me. What if I did? Connor asked. How far would you go to win? The better question is, sir, is how far will you go to win? I looked him steadily in the eyes as I spoke, although his back was to the fire and his eyes were set in the shadow. You killed Latimer, so we know you're willing to murder to win. I am. Connor backed up, speaking to all of us again, and I'm willing to lie, to cheat, and to steal. And I'm willing to command my soul to the devils if necessary, because I believe there is no exoneration in my cause. I need one of you to conduct the greatest fraud ever perpetrated within the country of Carthya. This is a lifetime commitment. It will never be safe to back down from my plan and tell the truth. To do so would destroy not only you, but the entire country. And you will do it to save Carthia. To save Carthia, Tobias asked. How? Later, Connor said. Until then, boys, Mott was laid out on a blanket for each of you by the fire. Tonight we sleep, and we sleep well, because tomorrow our work will begin. I chose the blanket closest to me. Roden lay near me and wrapped his blanket tightly around him. Remember when I said I never won rounds against the old soldier? He asked, without waiting for an answer. Roden added, It's because I knew he'd stop if I won. I'm good with a sword. Maybe you can use some other skills to get us out of here, I mumbled. You saw what he did to Latimer. Roden was silent for several minutes, then whispered, They just killed him. Told him he was safe to go, then they killed him. What if Connor's planning that would make him willing to kill? He's planning a revolution, I whispered back. Connor is going to use one of us to overthrow the kingdom.